Hi, everybody. It is Monday, May 15th. I'm sitting behind the camera right now because I want to just show something on to you today. And rather than me being in it, I just wanted to get us started and then play it for you. We over the weekend, Denny Tedesco and Russ Kunkel and I went up to San Rafael and played the film festival up there. We closed out the film festival actually with the Immediate Family movie, which was just great. It was a beautifully restored old theater, and it was packed to the gills. They completely sold out, and some people standing in the aisles. And when it ended, we got a standing ovation. I mean, it was like really a fabulous evening. People really got it and really enjoyed it. And then we had they set up a dinner down the street. I think the place was called the Lotus, an Indian restaurant, and a whole pile of the people from the film festival were there and spent like another hour and a half just talking to people about it and going over all kinds of things that they still had questions about. It was just a fabulous night, and I'm so glad we got to do it. And I think there's more of those coming up. I think Denny and I might be going up to Modesto to do a film festival there. And then there's going to be a screening at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood in late June, somewhere either the 21st or 24th, somewhere in there. And I'll get all the information out because anybody who's in the area that's interested can buy a ticket. They're not expensive, I don't think, for these, and go see the movie in the Chinese Theater. And I think Cooch and Steve will be there for the Q&A because Russ and I at that point will be out with Lyle Lovett, and I think Waddy's going to be back out with Stevie Nicks. But it should be a really terrific evening. It really breaks my heart not to be at that one. But every time we're doing Q&As for our movie, it always ends up coming back to The Wrecking Crew and Denny Tedesco's great movie about his father, Tommy Tedesco, and the legendary musicians of what ended up being called The Wrecking Crew, with Carol Kay and Hal Blaine and Mike Melvoin and Larry Knechtel. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on. There was a tremendous core of musicians who played on all the records that were coming out of Los Angeles from basically kind of the end of the 50s up into the 70s. And, and people never realized that when they were listening to Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys and the Association and the Monkees and all these recordings that, the Tijuana Brass, it was these people playing on all of those records, but they never got credit on albums. So people didn't know who these guys and gals were. That was the great fortune that we had when we started, that Peter Asher, who produced and managed James Taylor and was one of the very first people I worked with in this business, insisted that our names appear on the album jacket, so that when people were listening to like James Taylor and, everybody from that period, Linda Ronstadt and Carole King and everybody, when they would look at the back of the album, our names would be on it. So we became recognizable to them. And that was one of the greatest blessings any of us could have enjoyed. But when we're doing the Q&As, I end up talking a bunch about that. And Tommy Tedesco was probably one of the greatest guitar players, studio guitar players that ever lived, and a true character. And I had spent so many sessions with him. I was very fortunate that I was in a transitory situation where I got to, when I was in 1967, when I was in a band group Therapy, Mike Post was our producer, and we were too young and inexperienced to play on our own records. So the Wrecking Crew played on our record, and I'm sitting there in United A in Hollywood, looking through the window at the cream of the crop of LA studio musicians, thinking, I could never do this. This is amazing. I had never been in a studio before. And about 3 years later, I was working with so many of these people on a daily basis. And Tommy was one of the one. Tommy and Hal Blaine and Mike Melvoin and Larry Knechtel were the ones I played with probably the most. Oh, no, don't do that. Stop that right now. Stop that. God, you can't breathe on these track pads without some crap going on. But I had so many fun adventures in the studio with Tommy. He was just a hoot, one of the funniest people I've ever known, and just made every time I walked in and I saw that he was going to be on it, it just put a smile on my face. One of my, people talk about, I've got this whole thing about my producer switch on my on one of my basses. And that came from sitting next to Tommy Tedesco at Universal Studios, where there used to be a really great recording studio on the Universal Studios lot. And we did tons of the TV shows like Rockford Files and Hill Street Blues and Magnum PI and the A-Team and all these shows. But we were doing, I forget, it might have been Knight Rider. But there were baffles that we sat behind for sound, so sound wouldn't travel all over the room. And we probably, on this date, there was probably about maybe 40 musicians on the date, and I'm sitting behind a baffle next to Tommy, and the guy who's conducting is across the room, and he's decided he needs kind of a different sound for this, whatever the cue was. So he's saying to Tommy, could you play mandolin on this one? So Tommy waves, says, he gives him a heads up and bends down behind the baffle and picks up his mandolin and plays it, and the guy goes, no. He ends up going through about a half a dozen instruments that he wants Tommy to try, and Tommy just waves each time and bends over in another direction, picks up another instrument and plays until they finally heard what they wanted to hear. Now I'm sitting next to Tommy losing my mind because Tommy only had his acoustic guitar with him. So he would just bend over like he was picking something else up and then play his guitar in another position until the person finally heard what they wanted to hear. And I looked at Tommy and I just said, I just learned more in 5 minutes sitting next to you than I learned in all my years of junior high, high school, college, music courses and stuff, how things really work. And at that point, then I went home and drilled a hole in my bass and put a Switchcraft toggle switch on it that if I was working with somebody who said, can you make this shimmer? Can you make it more blue? Some nebulous request, I would make sure they could see me flip the switch, and then I would play in a slightly different position, and usually they would go, that's great, thank you. Just like there were a number of studios that had producers' faders, a little section of usually at the end of the console, where the producer could sit and make adjustments to things, but it didn't do anything. But it gave them a chance to be involved, they thought they were making changes, but they actually weren't. But getting back to where I am today, having just spent my weekend with Denny Tedesco, and we always end up talking about his dad. His dad was just so great. I thought, I'll just give you a couple of snippets of what Tommy Tedesco was all about. So here's, this is from from the Wrecking Crew. So here we go, Tommy Tedesco.
I was very jealous of the guitar when we were first dating and got engaged, and he paid a lot more attention to the guitar, I felt. So I gave him an ultimatum, it's me or the guitar. And he said, honey, the guitar doesn't have legs, you do. He got so upset with him, I took my ring and I threw it at him. Then I went looking for it.
And I was one of these late starters in life. I wasn't one of these guys that you read about in the books. You read these articles in Guitar Player magazine, the guy says, well, when I was 12 years old, I had the chops of a reindeer and all this stuff. When I was 12 years old, I was playing marbles myself. I don't know. And when I was 24, I was at Douglas Aircraft, moving boxes and trying to play guitar. I was 24. I was still into this. Whoa, I'm in a 7th position. Whoa. And I finally learned one hip chord. Whoa. So I'm not one of them guys you read about.
We we went to the prom, and Ralph Martiri was playing the dance and found out that their guitar player was leaving that night. And he tried out, auditioned, and he was hired right then and there. It was on a Friday night, and the Saturday night he left for New York City.
Tell the truth.
Okay, you gotta let go. Martiri was going to get a guitar singer so that he could only pay for one guy. He decided he knew there was nothing there in Niagara Falls for him. He wanted to go to California to play.
While my father struggled to find work playing guitar, he had to make ends meet working in a warehouse. He always said it was the best job he ever had. He hated it so much it made him practice every day.
I was told by two guys before we left, he's never going to make it. So after 7 months of struggling here, Daddy wanted to go back. And I said, there's no way, because I wasn't giving in to those two guys. And that's what Dad said, my stubborn Sicilian wife.
In fact, my wife was behind me 100%, like all the time I worked, and it was where she was working. She took the calls, she never complained. I would come in at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I'd see my kids whenever. My wife accepted it. This was our living. Our whole family took it exactly that way. Every once in a while, a musician's wife would come and complain to her, and she'd talk to them. She'd say, well, look, that's his living.
Well, Carmi never talked to Barbara the Barbarian.
My father would say there are only 4 reasons to take a gig. For the money, for the connections, for the experience, or just for fun.
I got to tell you a story about your dad. We were in Western Studio 3 there, and Jan Berry, or Jan and Dean, he counted the song. Everybody ready? Yeah, okay. Tedesco started playing. And Jan said, stop, wait. He went over and looked, and he said, Tedesco, what are you doing? Tommy, the music was upside down, and Tommy was reading it backwards. Now, that's a true story. But you talk about getting a laugh out of it. Tommy was a cut-up.
Okay, so that's a bit of Tommy. This is classic Tommy right here. Let me show you this one.
I did all the work in L.A.
Always looking to carry a joke a little further, my dad dressed up as a 280-pound ballerina and went on the Gong Show.
I used to be number 1. I did all the work in this town.
You should think about what he's saying in the lyrics to his song. Don't dwell on the costume too much, because it tells a lot about the way the business in this town works. And for being a person with a sense of humor, I think Tommy's had to put up with a lot of really stupid things.
In the 50s I was something, in the 60s I was a king. The 70s come around, now I'll do anything.
Yeah, just this was a true character, but a brilliant, brilliant musician. I really cherish every moment I got to spend with this guy. So that's it. I just wanted to get, I mentioned Tommy Tedesco so often. I just wanted those of you who had never seen him or really were aware of him, just to see who this was. And I just get such a kick out of being with Denny on this immediate family project, just trading stories about his dad, who was one of the very unique cats in this business. So I'm going to get running. I'll get back to some of my music tomorrow, but I just Tommy's been on my mind doing all this film stuff, and I just wanted to share a moment of it with you. So take good care, and I will see you all tomorrow, and looking forward to this weekend with Steve Postel at McCabe's. That's going to be a fun gig for us all to get together. We'll be playing Steve Postel's music, because I met Steve probably 15, 18 years ago at a NAMM show, and he said, you're going to play on my record. And I did, and then we've been playing together ever since. And it'll be fun just to spend an evening. James Harris playing guitar on this, who's going to be out with Lyle and the large band. And this is just a real good. Dan Navarro's going to be there. It's going to be a fun evening, so I'm looking forward to that. Going to head to the post office now with a few books that got ordered over the weekend, and just take care of some stuff around here. So take good care, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow, and I'll be back in front of the camera tomorrow. So take care. All the best. Bye-bye.